Every old house tells a story, but few spin a richer, more complex and compelling tale than Wilmington's Bellamy Mansion. There's the story of northern-born white architects, Black artisans, most of them slaves, who left the imprint of their skills on the city. The story of a proud Southern family that built, lost, and regained its home. The story of enslaved men, women, and children who lived, worked, and were finally freed. The story of stalwart preservationists who fought time, weather, decay, and a disastrous fire to keep this important piece of their region's history alive. The Bellamy Mansion is a spectacular example of antebellum design that evidences the South's exuberant classicism on the eve of the Civil War. Its design reflects the geography of the area, and its many large doors and windows catch breezes off the Cape Fear River. The entire complex was home to the 11-member Bellamy family and their 9 enslaved domestic workers. The mansion was built for John and Eliza Bellamy and their family by enslaved and free workers. Dr. Bellamy was a planter, businessman, and physician. Their house, completed in 1861, combines elements of the popular 19th century Italianate and classical revival styles in opulent fashion, on a scale seldom rivaled in the city or state. Dr. John D. Bellamy, a native of South Carolina, came to Wilmington to study medicine under Dr. William James Harris. He courted the doctor's daughter, Eliza, and after formal study at the University of Pennsylvania, he returned to marry her in 1839, established a medical practice, and started a large family. Although Dr. Bellamy eventually owned a large plantation in nearby Brunswick County and a turpentine enterprise in Columbus County, the family always had its main residence in Wilmington. In 1859, John and Eliza Bellamy embarked on construction of their new home. According to family tradition, their eldest child, Mary Elizabeth, or Belle, proposed the column design. Dr. Bellamy hired local architect-builder James F. Post to plan and build the house. Post, a native of New Jersey who had become a leading Wilmington builder, had recently completed supervising construction of nearby City Hall, Thalian Hall. Post assigned his newly employed draftsman, or assistant architect, Rufus Bunnell of Connecticut, to draw plans for the Bellamy complex. Enslaved and free African-American carpenters, plasterers, and other artisans constructed and finished the house and outbuildings. Among these was the free mulatto carpenter and foreman, Elvin Artis, enslaved carpenter Henry Taylor, and enslaved plasterer William B. Gould. Bunnell often mentioned the workers on the project, writing in his diary, "Almost to a man, these mechanics were slaves. As capable as they might be, all the earnings that came from their work was regularly paid over to their masters." Early in 1861, the Bellamys and 9 of their 115 slaves moved into their new home. These enslaved workers included coachman and butler Guy Nixon, Sarah, the cook and housekeeper, Rosella Simmons, the laundress, and her daughters Harriet and Charlotte, Joan, the family's nursemaid, and her daughter Caroline, 14-year-old Marianne Nixon, and an unnamed 1-year-old girl. In March 1861, the family held a festive housewarming party with lavish food and a band playing on the back porch. Within a few months, the Civil War began, and 17 months after that, in early September 1862, the family left the city to escape a yellow fever epidemic and the impact of the war. They, along with many of their slaves, took up residence inland at Floral College in Robeson County. They remained there with occasional visits back home throughout the war, leaving only Sarah in charge of the Wilmington house. In late February of 1865, Wilmington fell to Federal troops. The occupying military administration made the vacant Bellamy Mansion its headquarters, with Union General Joseph Hawley in charge. As a strong secessionist, Dr. Bellamy had to travel to Washington and obtain a pardon from President Andrew Johnson before he could reclaim the family home. The Bellamys finally returned to their house in the fall of 1865. Within a few years, Eliza Bellamy planted the formal garden, and the family had the handsome iron fence installed, as shown in the earliest photograph of the house with the family standing in front. The only former slave to remain until 1870, and now as paid domestic servant, was Mary Ann. After the war, Bellamy family members continued their lives as prominent citizens of Wilmington, with the sons succeeding in politics, law, business, and medicine. Several of the black artisans, such as carpenter Henry Taylor, likewise took leading roles in Wilmington business and politics. Plasterer William B. Gould wrote a memoir, Diary of a Contraband, describing his daring escape from slavery in 1862, his service in the Union Navy, and later life in Massachusetts as a brick contractor. The Bellamy family lived in the house until 1946, when Ellen Douglas Bellamy, the last surviving of John and Eliza's children, died there. She had published her memoir, Back with the Tide, in 1940, and it relates her experiences before, during, and after the war, and provides many details about how the family and slaves lived on the site. When Ellen Bellamy died, the mansion very nearly died too. For more than 40 years, it stood practically empty and unpainted. Fortunately, Bellamy descendants and other individuals, businesses, and foundations rallied to save this architectural treasure. In early 1972, a fire heavily damaged the house, making its restoration more urgent and costly than ever expected. The restoration continued after the mansion became a stewardship property of Preservation North Carolina, a statewide nonprofit organization. In 1994, the restored Bellamy Mansion Museum opened to the public. The next steps came with the restoration of the formal garden, the reconstruction of the carriage house you are currently sitting in, and a multi-year restoration of the site's original slave quarters. Of a type once common, the Bellamy slave quarters is a rare surviving antebellum urban outbuilding. The handsome structure reflects the architectural style of the mansion and was built just before it in 1859. It is one of only a few urban slave dwellings open to the public in the entire United States. We believe the two-story brick structure was home to the female enslaved workers. Guy Nixon may have slept in the carriage house. The Bellamy Mansion compound, with its beautifully restored mansion, reconstructed carriage house, and highly significant slave quarters, tells the tale of a complicated time filled with diverse people. Over the span of more than 150 years, this site has revealed a history of men and women who were enslaved and free, lived during a time of war and peace, were both rich and poor, and young and old. Because family, community, and statewide preservationists were able to save this magnificent work of architecture, we have a tangible vision of the Bellamy family, the enslaved men, women, and children who worked here, the architects and the skilled builders and artisans who created this place. We honor this shared history through tours, exhibits, and programs that explore our rich architectural and social history. We hope you will enjoy your visit as you experience the Bellamy Museum for yourselves.